Hi, I'm Andy Schmuckler, and let me say that my critique of what Biden has done is not individual to me. A number of insightful observers have said that Biden's been played, that he has allowed the guy who's dependent on American support to defy American will without paying any price. So that he has failed to utilize the leverage he has instead of Israel's dependency on American arms, giving some pressure that American interests cannot be trampled on. When the client, the dependent one, the one whose needs support, is deliberately going against the wishes of the supporting power, why would you continue to provide support regardless? Why would the dependent one do whatever the hell it wanted at the expense of the one that continues to provide support? But how did that happen? This is the Biden administration that showed brilliance in the run-up to the Ukraine crisis. So we imposed upon our enemy, thanks to Joe Biden's statecraft, a huge price, thwarted his will, and actually grew NATO that Putin had thought to intimidate. How could the guy who orchestrated that coming together of the free world then go into this situation with Gaza and make such an obvious mistake of failing to utilize the superior power to advance your interests and not just get played by somebody? Netanyahu. I have trouble with that name. People tell me I do it wrong. I actually knew that family, but that's another story. But I say the name wrong. It's Netanyahu. And I feel like saying Netanyahu, and I'm wrong. You could hear that Biden was simultaneously expressing real support for Israel and pushing continually for the process to become less wantonly indifferent to innocent lives. And the government of Israel takes the weapons and does the opposite. Why would that happen? Why would a guy who played Ukraine so brilliantly, has he got to do with, one of them is Joe Biden's really good at, cooperative building, dealing with one's allies, or is it that that somehow there's something in the situation that prevents him from demanding anything of the other? That one's got to do with cooperation and one involves a certain amount of conflict, and Biden kind of backed down and let Netanyahu walk all over him? so that the Israelis continually got what they needed, and then they went about making the situation worse. Now you can say, well, Biden is a friend of Israel, but if I had been the one talking at the bully pulpit, I would have said these choices are contrary to the interests of the Israeli people and the long-term survival of the state of Israel, which I think they are. It was not a pro-Israel policy to support the terrible decisions that the Netanyahu government were making about how to respond to October 7th. I wrote at the time, I think it was in December, that it had become clear that Netanyahu was not going to take Biden's concerns into account, and that maybe even he was politically hostile to doing anything that would make Biden look good when he's up for re-election, or then that his vice president is up for re-election. I don't know quite how to picture it. Well, I've raised this question with several people that I have in my conversational world who I thought might be insightful about such a thing. And one of the ideas that was proposed was that there's something about the degradation of Biden's consciousness through aging that enabled him to get into a place where he'd insist on a really foolish way of playing your cards. I mean, what I'm saying you could find in a brilliant piece by Thomas Friedman and what's his name in the Washington Post? I forget the name. Some really heavyweights have come in and they've just laid it out. It's really clear. So if Biden was having a discussion with his national security advisor and Secretary of State, and he said, "No, we're going to do this," it's hard to believe that they would think that was anything but a foolish way of playing your cards. Just like maybe like in King Lear, he decides on a really foolish way of proceeding to retire and give his kingdom to his daughters. An old man's kind of a mistake. Is that what Biden was doing? I don't. That's what some people or one person suggest. No, I think it's more than that. That there's some belief that that Biden maybe got into a place that's sort of a little bit crazy about the situation in a way that you would say that's a sign of senility. Well, I don't see him that way, though. I don't see him. It seems like he would. Hard to imagine why he would think that was the best policy for the United States to allow itself to be walked over by this fascist regime calling the shots stupidly. So a pro-American policy is the same as a pro-Israeli policy, which is to not let this thing blow up the whole situation. And discredit Israel in all these ways, and pay a much higher price than the benefit you get from killing as many Hamas people as you want, because you've created the groundwork for terrorism for generations to come by becoming a hated country as the whole world watches what happens in Gaza City. It would have been so easy to for the American president to make a statement both to the American people and to the Israeli people to show that the Israeli a pro-Israel policy and a pro-American policy is different from what this government is insisting on doing, making and applying pressure, maybe precipitating an election, but confrontation. If you're if the government of Israel is going to be so defiant as they've been of what Biden has been asking for when they need his support. So if it would have been that obvious, then Blinken and Sullivan, the two honchos of American foreign policy under Biden, would have been there in the room discussing this thing and coming up with, well, what is our move, given that the Israelis are doing this, which we don't want them to do. And I can't imagine that they would have been okay with this. I mean, it's a crazy way of running a powers when there's very important things at stake, including the 2024 election. A big war in the Middle East is not an American interest. Our continuous pattern is trying to integrate Israel into the wider world so that we can just relax and not have to deal with this thing for decades and decades and decades. And assuming then that Sullivan and Blinken, security advisor, Secretary of State, see, this is just crazy to do this. They must have made a strong pitch to Biden. No, that would be a mistake. What would it say about Biden? I've been confused about how should we conceive of Biden's mental state in relation to aging. I've been very confused about that. And so I feel like I think he's smarter than that. I mean, I don't think he would have needed his national security advisor to tell him that wasn't the way to go. And then if he'd heard his people telling, excuse me, that, oh no, that's a mistake, Mr. President, he would have been persuaded. But I'm at an age where I've been watching some of the people I've known for many years become a little bit different from what they've been because of certain kinds of aging that immediately impinge upon consciousness. That things are happening in the brain that's got to do with getting old. And I've never been clear about how to see Biden in that respect. I was ready to vote for him. I've been a real fan of Biden's in many ways since he became the Democratic hope to take the presidency away from Donald Trump. He's been our hero, and he's played his part in many ways very well. And I thought, oh, well, you never know what's going to happen between the ages of 82 and 86 or something like that. But it's not hugely risky to think that somebody who's in Biden's shape at this point won't be able to do okay as president for the next 4 years. And it's so much obviously better for the country than the alternative. So I was ready to vote for him. And then that debate happened, and other things seemed to have come out from the past that maybe had been covered up. I'm not clear about what the picture is. So I don't know whether Biden's mishandling of his position, his important position in the way that this Gaza crisis proceeds, I don't know if it's a sign that this guy's gotten too old to be able to. But it wasn't very long. It was less than 2 years ago that he did this brilliant thing with NATO. So I'm confused. I haven't seen any sign that that the Secretary of State is out there thinking that he's the agent of a president that's got a crazy policy? I mean, wouldn't that be a lot of tension? What would you do if you're a Secretary of State and a senile old man in some kind of King Lear thing misplays the situation? And then you're supposed to go out there and play those cards. Not being given the cards you really need to be able to protect both the United States and Israel. What would you do? I think I would resign. First, I'd threaten to resign. But anyway, I don't see any sign whatsoever that there's an issue any place in the government. Haven't heard rumors. The Secretary, for the Department of State, White House, or the President and POTUS at odds over. I don't know what's going on. But isn't it clear that where we are now, in terms of American interests and Israeli interests, is a lousy place, that we've lost some important ground in both respects? Isn't that clear that this isn't the way we would want it to play out? And didn't the President of the United States have a fairly clear path to exercising significant leverage over the Israeli government to prevent something unnecessarily destructive from happening? I do believe that Kamala Harris is be a different thing. Politically, she's played the hand okay. Of the way she formulates her various things that she combines, she's able to maintain. I'm not. I am not expressing any opposition to the policy of my administration, of the administration that I serve. And she is opening the door to being continuous and moving into a different posture, because there are these two things: that the Israelis' right to security and the Palestinians' right to live in dignity and some self-determination, values that are not in conflict inherently. She's created the framework in which she can, and probably, I think, I would bet heavily, will improve but the damage has largely been done. You can't unring the bell that this Israeli government's response to October 7th has rung. This government made Hamas's efforts to destroy Israel closer to its goal. And Biden's mistake has been a puzzling part of how this didn't play out as it ideally should have. Let's hope that that better things may lie ahead with an American government that isn't in the thrall to whatever led to these bad decisions.